Hi everyone, Mike Handcock here, Chairman of the Circle of Excellence Group, and today we're going to talk about trust. And I really think this is such an underplayed thing in that we go, yes, we must trust somebody, but how do we actually design trust and how do we make sure that we are paying homage to trust and doing the right things? Because if we have trust, it makes things so much more easy for us to actually develop our business and develop it more rapidly. So today I'm going to take you through some aspects of trust. I'm going to be asking some questions. I want you to go to the chat whenever you see those questions, pop in some answers so we can have a good, robust discussion about trust. So let's get underway. So I wanted to look at trust from a perspective of high-level deal making. And what's high-level deal making mean? Well, it means selling products that cost a bit of money, not just selling something. This is not for selling toothpicks or cans of Coca-Cola at the local service station. This is actually for moving people into coaching programs, consultancy practices, selling high-ticket items. That's what we're really talking about here. So with that, there's two things, and it's a shift from grinding it to a new perspective. Now, this grind it thing that, Gary Vee and all these guys talk about, which I don't buy into at all, by the way, because yes, we all have to grind it from time to time. That's the nature of business. There are highs and lows. When you go into lows, you have to grind. But most people spend a lot of their time in what I'm calling the Hermit syndrome. They have meetings wherever their client wants them to have meetings, mostly in loud, cheap cafes, right? They're always pitching features. Our product will do this for you. We can do that for you. This is how it'll work. It's that sort of thing that they're pitching all the time. They're always doing things one-to-one, and that can only result on a linear growth because you've only got so much time. And that makes you vulnerable to shifts in the market and to burnout. So what we're suggesting is you move from the hermit grinding it thing to really a relational side of building trust, which we would like to call the ring of steel. So that's meeting in 5-star places. And, if you're meeting in 5-star places, your price shifts. That's using wingmen. And I'm going to talk about wingmen a little bit in this as well. And it's also that whole 1 + 1 = 11. So it's basically generating potential exponential growth. So if you just add 1 or 2 more components into this, you'll add something exponential. And engineering your ecosystem so that your ecosystem isn't necessarily related to what's going on in the market. It's always about reciprocal trust. And if it's always about reciprocal trust, that makes a big difference. So, because trust is the number one thing. And let's face it, we live in a world of fake news. We live in a world where there's AI all the time. We were sitting in Lundy and Sherry, who works for me at the Global Speakers Federation, were having dinner in Cairns just 2 weeks ago. And we're sitting there, and there's somebody else who works for me at Global Speakers Federation, Michael. Michael couldn't be there. So he was still back in Connecticut. So at dinner, we took a photo we had of Sherry and I. We put it into AI, and we took a photo of Michael and we added it in. And we said, do a photo of Michael serving us dinner. And it came out with this photo, which was Sherry and I sitting at the table and Michael serving us dinner, dressed as a waiter with a napkin over his arm. I swear you couldn't tell it wasn't all 3 of us, and we sent it to him, right? And so that's the world in which we live in. So how do we engineer an ecosystem of trust? Because that's what we have to do now. We have to work harder on trust than we've ever worked before. So what does that mean? Well, it means firstly, and I want to read this to you because I don't expect you to read all the fine print here, but this one's really important. A multi-million-dollar deal is rarely won or lost in the final contract negotiation. It is won or lost in the first 5 seconds of human evaluation. Before a single business metric's discussed, the deal maker, that's you, has subconsciously evaluated, the deal maker being the other person, has subconsciously evaluated your positioning, your environmental control, and your psychological alignment. So I want to share something with you that's going to give you that first 5 seconds so you can sum up the other person pretty quickly. And it's bringing all of the personality profiling that down to something very simple for you. So it's a matrix. And if you look at the top area of the matrix, that's task-orientated people, and people-orientated people down the bottom. Actually, that's the other way around. I'm sorry. And then introverted on the left and extroverted on the right. So there are 4 basic types here. And I really love Alison Moonie, who's a great friend of mine's way of discussing this. She calls them the powerful, the playful, the precise, and the peaceful. So we're going to do this now very quickly. The powerful is a driver type of person. When you meet them straight up, they generally shake your hand super firm. They often roll their hand over yours so their palm is down because they're taking control. When you look at the environment that you meet them in, they don't like clutter. They like an austere environment. That means very little in it. Clean lines, they're highly organized. You won't get them to go to a cafe that's full of old stuff. They'll normally like something that's, very clean. The deal killer for them, small talk. When you start with, so how's the family and all that sort of stuff, they go, another one of those, they can't be bothered. They're not going to, that's already a big tick off in their mind. They're going to look for somebody who actually gets down to business. But what do they want? They want options. They want to know they can do A, B, or C because they want to save time and they want to get straight to the point. By the way, your presenter today is exactly this profile, okay? And those of you know that me well, I don't squeeze palm down because I'm well aware of that. I have a firm handshake. I don't like decluttered environments. I don't do small talk. I get straight to the point, and I like options, and I like to save time. So let's look at the second one here. This is the playful. This is the socialite. Sometimes they've got big energy. Sometimes they're like, oh, it's so great to see you, and they hug you and all that sort of stuff. They're a little bit more flamboyant. They like lots of photos. They like awards. They like things that show them that they're out and about. The deal killer for them is if you say, these are the rules and these are the agendas, and you have sterile meetings that are in an office somewhere. You've got to do this socially with them. So your winning pitch, move to a social setting. A lunch is great. And build up their future dreams. By the way, this is more Lundy's profile. Now, the powerful person is more introverted. The playful person is much more extroverted. I'm sorry, I didn't check this. Well, I did check this slide. I didn't pick this one up. But the powerful person is task-orientated, but the playful person is definitely people-orientated. So let's move to the bottom 2 here. So I'm going to go to the precise, which is the analyst. Generally, when you meet this type of person, they have quite a weak handshake. You almost go, oh, am I crushing their hand? And they have minimal eye contact. Often they're not looking at you at all. Often they're not looking down. Now, that can be cultural as well. Some Asian countries are taught not to look at you. Some African tribes are taught not to look at you. But generally speaking, if you get a Western person, minimal eye contact, they're likely to be in this type of area. Their environment is generally messy, but it's messy not with stuff, but with graphs, with books, with charts, with those type of things, with paperwork and with ideas they've written down and that sort of thing. The deal killer for them is you won't get them if you hype what you're doing too much, or you have even one singular bit of factual inaccuracy. If you say, the USA invaded Bahrain instead of Iran, they are not going to trust you on anything else. So that comes to our fourth person, our peaceful. So that's all about the relationship. Peacefuls are extroverted and very people-orientated as well, okay? They've got a solid, genuine handshake with a great smile, and they generally look you straight in the eye. Their environment is all to do with family and friends. They make you feel at home. They're not going to take you to a sterile environment like the powerful will. They'll take you to a homely environment. They're much more the people who are happy at their local cafe. So have that awareness that if you're going to take them into a 5-star environment, make it feel homely. The deal killer with them is the exact opposite of the deal killer with the powerful. These people want to talk small talk. They want to know, how was your weekend? How did you get into this business? Who's in your family? And they want to know that you're asking those things about them. They want to know that you know their children's names, their pets' names, etc. And the winning pitch for them is share your background and reassure them that you're constantly in this for the long haul. So the powerful, the playful, the precise, and the peaceful. I'd love to see you go to the chat now and tell me, which one do you think you are? Karen says a mix of precise and peaceful. Definitely don't have a weak handshake. Yep. James is a peaceful. Yes, that would be totally true. I would agree with that. Karen, you are right. I would agree with that. Combo of powerful and precise. Yeah, Carrie, I think that's probably true. Precise would be your first, your powerful would be your second. Claire, mixture of peaceful and playful. Interesting. Okay. You ask a lot of questions. I thought you might have had a bit of precise in there. And Dearly, definitely a peaceful. And great to see you on the call. Rob, definitely a peaceful. A crazy mix of powerful and peaceful. Yeah, interesting. Okay. Powerful, then precise, Gavin. Yes, you would have to be coming out of the type of business that you're in. If you don't have precise there, you never would have got to the top of that industry unless you were just totally a playful and relationship orientated. Sandeep, 80% powerful, 20% peaceful. Okay, very good. And Monet, great to see you here. Playful and peaceful mix too. So here's an interesting thing as well. When you put whatever your type is under absolute pressure, the peacefuls become powerfuls, the powerfuls become peacefuls, and the playful become precises, and the precises become playful. So it's very fascinating when you do that. That's what happens. So your role here, and I'd suggest you take a screenshot or whatever you need to do of this, your role is within 5 seconds to make a decision on who's in front of you when you first meet them and start matching and mirroring their style. It's irrelevant to them what your style is. So when I was back in the day when I had my own business in financial planning many years ago, like 30 years ago, and I learnt this stuff, I was probably a lot more powerful than I am now. So I was definitely just go, total driver, everything. I wanted to do everything now. I actually got to a point in my business whereby if I could ascertain that the person that had been referred to me was a peaceful, the minute I met them, I would immediately push them onto somebody else in my office. I wouldn't deal with them. Why? Because I couldn't be bothered with the small talk. It just took up all my time. I would much rather deal with the precise because I can handle that, or the powerful, playful, or another powerful was easy. But the peacefuls were just too fluffy for me. I've changed, so don't worry, those of you that are peaceful on the call. I can be peaceful too these days, but back in my early 20s, that's who I was. So if you'd come to sell me anything, and even into my corporate days where I was running financial services companies, as soon as somebody came to sell me something and they tried to build a relationship with me, tell me a bit about you. Where did you come from? How did you get this job? I would just close down immediately and go, I'm not buying off this person. So have that awareness that you're not matching and mirroring with these people, then you can definitely be in a position where you can lose a deal and not even know how you lost the deal. Okay, so let's having a look at controlling the dynamic, because this is environmental. So selling's fundamentally about who holds the alpha position. So when you want to do a deal and somebody invites you to go to a loud cafe, you're on their turf and you're out. You're not the alpha. You're now the beta, right? So the environment establishes a subconscious perceived value. This is why we always like, if we're ever pitching, and I always like to pitch on Zoom, by the way. That's my preferred method because I can totally control my environment. I can have my backgrounds on and everything looks the same. And, sometimes it's a struggle. I've got great light today because I'm at home, but, you would have seen me over the last 4 months in some places with really poor light. Even taking lights with us has not worked that well. Believe it or not, with the exception of those little torches you buy from the surplus stores that are really bright. They're probably the best lights you can take on the road with you. I just have 2 of those, and then they're good until I forget to buy batteries. So as you can see on the left here, a cheap cafe, you're going to pay $5 for the coffee maybe, but it's uncontrolled and it's noisy. It puts the person in charge. And if you take them to somewhere 5-star or a high-end hotel or something like that, or a private club, that's your turf. The coffee's definitely more, but you will just benefit so much more from having that. I see the question, Sandeep, how do we ascertain personality in 30 seconds online without a handshake? You'll often see it from the setups that people have got behind them, from what they say in the first 30 seconds, from how they look in the first 30 seconds, from their level of agitation. So, if you're online with me in the first 30 seconds, I find that I'm normally leaning forward until I get into my talk and I can relax a bit. So you've got to pick up those signals, but it is harder online for many people. It's a lot of it's time in the saddle and just sort of going, okay, making a note, even a note for yourself next to yourself online. This person could be a peaceful. And if that's the case, having even that last slide printed out and sat near you for the next year whilst you're doing online calls and really learning from this can really help you. Okay. So let's have a look at this psychological activation curve, which pretty much follows our money train. But you have to realize that before people meet with you, they're skeptics. They have a problem. They haven't given you time if they don't have something they want you to do for them. Nobody in 2026 or beyond sits there and goes, I am so bored, I think I'm just going to let the next person spend an hour of their time with me to try and sell me something. Oh, James Liddell, he's the next person. I would love to spend an hour with James because I just need to have somebody in my life. Nobody thinks like that. People go, what does this person want? I know they're going to try and sell me a service, but they're not going to give you that time unless they want the service. And if they don't know what it is, you've got a bit of work to do, okay? So your positioning comes next. You have to position yourself through social proof. You have to position yourself through the way that you dress, the way that you show up, the first words that come out of your mouth, and picking the right environment. Again, if we have to meet people face-to-face, we'll go to a private club or a high-end 5-star hotel. But I always try and control my environment this way by using Zoom because I'm very, very comfortable with it. Then you move from positioning to assurance. That's providing evidence required by their personality type to lower resistance, i.e. matching and mirroring who they are. I remember once I went to a sales meeting. It was when I was in financial services many years ago. I was a sales manager at the time. The year was 1993. I remember it clearly. That's a long time ago, 32 years. And one of my salespeople said, look, he's met with this person once briefly, but he said they're just so full on. He's so nervous going to see them, but he knows that they need a lot of products, right? So he did his basic needs analysis, but he's got another meeting. He said, would I please go with him? And I remember this very clearly. We went to this place. I can't remember what the guy did. It was some sort of manufacturing place. walked in, met with the CEO. And the minute I walked in, I shook his hand. He tried to bend my hand over, but I didn't let him. And then he said, I've got 5 minutes, so don't waste my time. And I said, you already know that nothing can be achieved in 5 minutes, so why don't you get off your high horse, actually get somebody to make us a coffee like a decent person would, and then put some time aside to look at your future, not try and alpha us. And he looked at me and he burst out laughing. He said, I like you. What sort of coffee do you want? And so sometimes when they're that brash, you've got to call them on their stuff. Sometimes when they're that playful, you've got to call them on their stuff. Sometimes when they just want to build relationships and not get to the point, you've got to call them on their stuff. And sometimes when they want to pull the fudge at just the one detail that doesn't mean anything to anyone, you've got to pull it. So then we're going to move to trust. And that's really about delivering samples of your value where it's low risk for them, okay? So trust isn't, hey, we're great, buy this product. That's not going to work. Trust is something like, I want to do a case study with you and show you what we're able to do for somebody else. That's trust building. Trust is, why don't you use this tool for a month, right? And see if you like it. There's a lot of people online doing those things now with different AI things where you get a free, 10 days or something to do that. That's trust building. Trusting is really letting people sample this. And then you move to love. That's lifting them up and moving beyond transaction into having them fall in love with you. And then you can move into sale and that sort of thing from there. I want to move to what I call the wingman. And the wingman is probably one of your greatest assets or allies, particularly in bigger deals. You can't often fly the plane alone when you've got a big deal. So if you're attempting to force trust onto somebody who's already skeptical, they're going to have an immediate psychological resistance. So how do you break that down? You break that down by having a wingman. So here is how I used to do it in corporate pitching. I would have somebody who was very detail orientated because in my corporate role, I'd often have to pitch to the financial people of high-end companies that we wanted to do strategic partnerships with. So I would go in and do my pitch. And then when I'd finish my pitch, I would say, I'm just going to give you a moment with Bob, and then I'll come back in about 10 minutes. And I'd leave the room. And Bob's first thing that he said was, now that Mike's gone, let me reassure you, he is full on, but he's a great guy. I'm going to go into some of the details with you that's really not Mike's expertise. And he would have those accountants in front of him, pull out a spreadsheet and go into the spreadsheet stuff. And then I'd give him about 10 minutes and I'd walk back in and it would be a different room. So I'd hyped it. I'd got the points across. I'd sold it, but the wingman had sealed the deal because he'd got those CFOs on that I couldn't get on because I couldn't speak their language. And it frustrated me to speak their language. So you have to have this awareness and you have to have the right wingman as well. So obviously Lundy and I are wingmen for each other in whole different things. If you've ever been to a mastermind, you've seen how that's worked. But you may need to look at somebody who's potentially a wingman for yourself as well to bring them into some of the bigger deals. They can actually just do nothing but be observers. I know when my friend Justin Herold was licensing his company, the first meeting he had, he just went to the company who was licensing his brand to, and they had something like 12 or 14 lawyers and a whole range of senior executives literally on one side of the table, and there was just him on the other. So for the second meeting where they upped the game, Justin actually invited 5 of his friends to come along. He told them to wear suits. They were just 5 of his friends, and he sat them down and he said, this is my team. I've asked them not to talk, but I want them to hear what you've got to say. And it changed the dynamic of the room. They started being more reverent. They started not being as pitchy as what they were. And they actually got the deal done in the third meeting, by the way. But they got the deal done. That was for a tremendous amount of money. I think he made $30 million off that. So it was pretty phenomenal. So a wingman is a really great idea for you. Okay. Now you can put those wingmen in a room. So if you're in a boardroom table like Justin was, you don't need all four of these, but you might choose one, or you might ask your wingman to play a role. And sometimes they're within the company. If you're selling business to business, sometimes they're in the business already. So it could be a personal MC, somebody who introduces you so that you don't have to sell yourself. That's a really good one. Lundy and I use that all the time. You know, if I try and sell myself, I just come across as a bragger. So does she. So we sell each other. Then you've got the boardroom buddy. Okay. So they're there. Everybody knows they're there. Everybody knows that they like you. You know, you're not coming in as just one individual there. You've already got somebody planted in the boardroom. So it feels like you've got a team already here. Then is your deal maker. They identify mutual synergies in a room, and they help you structure a win-win in this. So Lundy and I are often each other's deal makers because we'll pick things up that the other one won't necessarily in a boardroom situation. And then you've got the broker. This is the person who brings you in and actually introduces you in there. So that could be another supplier to that organization. So many of you have heard this story before, but when Lundy first started her consultancy business, she had 4 brokers that were already in the governments, the major corporates, etc., in the mining industry. And those people brought her in and they introduced her and they sat in those rooms while she sold her stuff. And that made it very, very easy for her to do business. So these are some different wingmen types that you may need. Okay, then there is people that we all must have, and you have them now. And I'm going to ask you a question in a minute, and I want you to go to the chat and give me an answer. But before this, I want to talk about a center of influence. Okay, so the center of influence could be, as it says there, an accountant, could be the mayor, could be the hairdresser. It's somebody who has influence to a lot of other people. Why are they important? They're important because they open doors for you. And our wealth is created 3 steps removed. There is a law of 3 steps removed. And what it means like this is if I take Mornay here and I introduce Mornay to Petsy, who I'm going to introduce Mornay to, that's sort of I'm the first step removed for Mornay. Petsy's the second step removed. But who he introduces her to might create everything that she's looking for. If you look back at some of the most significant relationships you've had in your life, they've often come from the 3rd step removed. So what you have to identify is the people who are the centers of influence, and they're the people who can open doors for you. They might not open doors to clients, but they might open doors to people who can get you clients. So how do you know who they are? Well, here's a good starting point. Maybe this is where I want to ask the questions. A center of influence is often somebody who's a confidant to you. They come to you and share their problems. They come to you and talk about things that are going on in their life. And it's interesting. Some people are surrounded by a lot of those type of people, but never ask for anything back. So my question to you is, can you think of anybody who comes to you often and asks for your opinion, your advice, your mentorship, your guidance, just a question, pours their life out to you, etc.? Go to the chat and tell me if you do find that person coming to you. And if so, even how many of those do you have coming to you? I don't know about you, but I've had those people all my life. Karen says yes. Okay, they could be good potential sense of influence. Yep, 2, Annalise, that's great that you can think of now. I think if you go through your phone, you'll find a few more. A few, says Claire. Okay, great. So we're getting more. Person in Rotary. Okay, awesome. Yep, there's another one. A few. Oh, that might be Yanif. I'm looking at the writing there. Hi, Yanif. Gavin, 2 to 5. Yeah, exactly. So these people, thanks for those, team. These people are door openers for you. They're actually great people to really help you to get to the next level, but it's not who they know. It's who the people that they introduce you to know. And that's where you need to start working this. And it's almost worthwhile looking at, okay, if you take those people that you wrote down there and go and look at their networks, go and look at them on LinkedIn. Who are they connected to? Who are the right people that are in the right industries for you? That's the type of work that I'd love you to do. Okay, so cultivating the whole ecosystem and building trust. We can engineer it and then we can cement it. So as far as engineering goes, the first thing is you want to give them samples of your work. That means bring them into your world. Invite them to sit in on events, mastermind sessions, something that you're doing, maybe even a pitch. One of the best ways is to say, have a look at my pitch. Bring them into a focus group where you're actually talking in that focus group about what you do and how you're going to pitch that. And you'll probably find that a number of those people will say, hey, I could use that, or I can introduce you to people, and those type of things. Focus groups are key in building trust because you're actively looking to seek their strategic advice, which elevates and validates their expertise. And it's securing an emotional investment in your success. We ran 2 focus groups late last year. Out of that, we ran one which was generic, meaning sort of rest of the world, and we ran a specific American one. Out of the American one, we got 2 high-level strategic partners from one of the people that was in our American focus group. And then third thing is total transparency, showing somebody the inner workings of what you're doing, of how you're doing it. And I'm not saying showing a competitor. I'm talking about talking to your accountant, your lawyer, your coach, the person that you know through that you really trust through your B&I group or whatever that you're involved in, your Circle of Excellence private member club. You know, showing them the inner workings of your methodology is a great way to build trust. And that trust then can open doors for them to introduce you to people, or maybe do business with yourself, or maybe partner with you, maybe even invest in you. Okay, so then we want to cement loyalty. And here's 3 good ways of cementing loyalty with people. Reciprocity. Not an easy word to say on a Friday, but on a Tuesday, it's okay. So referring business to them without expecting something in return. That's a great way because you're building up credits with them. Unexpected recognition. You know, Lundy calls it the muffin strategy. Drop in unannounced, just deliver value to them, check in with them without an agenda. Okay, we often do that on WhatsApp, so there's no muffin, but we often check in with people and just say, how are you going? Haven't talked to you for a while. What's been happening, et cetera, et cetera. And then integration. Invite them onto an advisory board that you've got, or into a project that you're working on to give their feedback or something like that. And that way you're more formalizing their role. We've got 5 people on our board of directors. In the last 3 months, we've seen all of them. So that's actually pretty good, really, because they live on pretty much 4 different continents. So just having those people there advising you, and for instance, Todd, who's on our board from Western Australia, we're out to dinner with him last week. Some of you would have seen the photos there. We sit down. We haven't seen him in a couple of years, and physically, and we sit down, we shake hands, and he says, tell me what you guys are up to and how can I help? It's the first question he asked. So, you know, having those people around creates something that tends to go on for years. Even Rick, who's now retired, lives in Auckland. We went out for a drink with him. The first thing he asks us, he's not on our board anymore, hasn't been on our board for about 3 years, he says, what are you guys up to at the moment? Ask me any tough problems. Let me see if I can help you. Okay? So it's this type of thing that can really help you do this stuff. Okay, so let's bring back this to a bit of a conclusion, then let's go to questions. This is the overall architecture of a really solid ring of steel. And if we start with the inner ring there, this is your advisory board. Now, Lundy and I are on your advisory board, but we shouldn't be the only ones. You should have a financial person on your advisory board, most probably your accountant. You probably should have at least one other person on your advisory board that had nothing at all to do with your business and knows nothing about it, just to give that outlier sort of type of vibe to you as well. Then we go into the middle ring. These are your wingmen that you can use on different deals that you're putting together to open different doors and to get you into places and boardrooms and things like that. And you need some brokers. You need some alliances in your wingmen. And then your outer ring are your centers of influence, people who know people. I put the hairdresser there in my slide because sometimes they're the best center of influence for any woman, because you spend a lot of time nail bars and hairdressers and things like that. If you just shift the talk to something you're interested in instead of talking about geopolitics or whatever goes on in there, you might find that these people actually know some really good people that you want to get to know, because their clients are made up of all sorts of people. So with that, I think I've given you a really good overview of building trust. Let's jump into any questions or comments that you've got, and let's pick those up. Got you on gallery view now, so I can see you all. Let me ask you a question to start. Monet, it's coming at you, then it's going to Gavin. And hi to those who've joined us just at the end here, the Harley and Sam. Monet, how do you build trust with somebody you don't know yet, currently?
I do believe that a lot of what you say is 60% of what you say is non-verbal. So I prefer with new people, with new potential clients, is to not have my first meeting online, because it's the body language, all of that is just. So I make sure that when I do have a potential clients, that I make sure I fly to them, or I make sure we're in a setting where I can see the body language and I can do the handshake if I need to and all of that. So the first thing I do when I am in front of that person is I find one thing that we both have in common. And that's really helped me because it genuinely, if I have long relationships with my clients, which I genuinely do, and my clients tend to stick around for many years, they genuinely remember our very first meeting because of that one common thing that we had in common. So whether it's that we both have daughters in grade 5, or we were both born in Limpopo, it could be something really small, but that's really helped me.
Thank you. I'll get to your question in a second. I just want to segue and ask Carrie a question. Carrie, how are you?
Good, thanks.
That's good. Without looking at the chat, is Monet a powerful, a peaceful, a playful, or a precise?
I would guess peaceful.
Absolutely. Thank you. Absolutely. And that's one of it too. She's a peaceful, playful, she says, right? But on the call, so what made you think, looking at her, I'm sort of talking to Sandeep's question before, but what made you, by simply looking at her and listening to her speak, think that?
Trying to find something in common with the person who she's just met. The examples she gave were to do with family and background. So relationships and the small talk and that sort of thing.
Yep. And if you just watch her body language online as well, right? So her body language is, a little shy. She speaks softly. So, she hasn't got that force of nature sort of voice or anything like that, And if you listen to Carrie's voice now, she's determined to give a right answer, and she's not going to mess around with frivolities. That's a powerful side coming through. Thanks, Carrie. That's great. Monet, I'll answer your question, then I'm going to go to Gavin. Let's see, where is it? Oh, how did I first establish my advisory board? I looked for diverse people that could bring different aspects, a financial aspect, a systems aspect, a big network aspect, and a marketing aspect. So that was the original board that I had. And then I went and said, who do I know who's probably got the best brand from a financial aspect? And I went, Lisa Dudson. Okay. So, and I've known her for 20 years. So I reached out to her and I said, do you want to be on our board? And she said, I thought you'd never ask. Right. And so it was that simple. And then the same with all of them. And they were all excited to be asked. So that's that. I just did it that way. Okay. Let's go to Gavin. I see a couple of other questions there. I'll get to those. Okay, Gavin, what do you do to establish trust? Because you're doing big deals.
Yeah, I actually haven't consciously thought about it. You know, what I because I'm new and transitioning into this, and you know, I've been in a corporate most of my life. But I would say that be yourself. You know, I effectively put myself in front of whoever it is and just be myself, and then try and use my intuition to establish where they're coming from and what ticks their buttons. But I haven't really gone into it in the psychological side and said, right, this guy's a that and this guy's a that.
I think it'd serve you very well to do that, even just to have that that one document I said everybody take a screenshot of in front of you, because for me it's second nature now. I learned this stuff so many years ago. It's second nature. As I said, it was 30 something years ago and I was using this stuff, so it's so ingrained in me now. I can literally look at people and go, there are this, there are that. But it really does help because, you know, if you're a person who's big on detail and you're talking to somebody like me, I'm just discarding that and going, tell me what my options are, right? I'll get one of my people to look over the detail. If you're a person who's big on relationships, but you're dealing with somebody who, if you're big on relationships and you're dealing with a playful who wants to go and socialize, you can be out having 4 meetings in a bar going nowhere before you even know this. Now, I'm sure you haven't. I'm not saying this to you, Gavin. I'm saying this for the benefit of everybody.
You know, I've been trying to think like, okay, how many deals have I missed because I haven't been structured? And I'm saying, well, I don't think that there are too many, but there's definitely a few that I can think of, you know, just off the top of my head. But
yep,
you know, consciously, I think, you know, there's some deals that I wanted, but never got, and probably because I wasn't structured enough in terms of, you know, the psychology behind it.
So that brings up another question, which sorry to interrupt, but it brings up another question or another point is, okay, you can raise your hands on this one, and if you're brave enough, who here has a pitch deck? Hi, Sarah. Who here has a pitch deck that helps them sell what they're selling? Oh, Sarah, Sandeep, James has got it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I've got a pitch deck, but it's not you know, it's not a structured pitch deck because I know exactly what I'm selling and how to go about it. That's in the corporate world. But the question, I have another question for you. So this year is my year of transition from corporate into you know, the private sector and the like. And I've been listening to what you've been saying regarding your team and your advisory board. And I'm starting to think I need to, before I even start, have that advisory board in place. Because
it's very wise.
It'll effectively, you know, push it in the right direction.
So, it's very wise.
You know, a lot of people they'd start on their own and kind of bumble along. But I just think it'll probably strengthen my position.
Yep, absolutely. So if any of you here don't have a pitch deck, then you're missing a tool that can guide you and keep your pitch the same all the time. Now, you just vary it depending on the person that you're dealing with, but most of you are probably, and look, honestly, our clients are better than most people. Most people are flying seat of their pants on every deal. They're writing things on backs of napkins in pubs and stuff like that, and then they have no idea whether they're making deals or not. They have no idea whether they're making the right deals by doing that. So I think by having a structured pitch deck that takes them through a process, it just keeps you aligned and takes everybody, you're funneling them to the one area that you want to funnel them to. So let's go to another couple of questions here. Rob, thanks. I loved hearing more about Notebook LM uses. Who's peaceful? Yeah, that's great, Rob. So for those of you that came later, my presentation today was taken from Notebook LM, and it's something that we're utilizing a little bit these days. We're certainly looking at the uses of it. I think it's a Microsoft product. No, it might be a Google product. But essentially, you can load up any content that you want to your notebook, and we load up videos. So we just go to YouTube and we found the videos. I tried to get a diversified bunch, put 50 videos in. Not all of them took, so there's about 35 in there. And it's really my test station. And then we just started asking it questions. My first question I ever asked Notebook LM was, what do I need to do in order to sell a business? I was blown away by the response that it gave me based on, it doesn't go outside your material. It's just your material. And I looked at it and I went, that's exactly what I would tell a client. So today I decided I would try Notebook LM because there's a feature to do presentations for you, to actually build this presentation that I shared with you today based on some prompts that I gave it, which literally took 5 minutes less, and enables us to have a really good, robust discussion, but also coming from a place where I wouldn't normally come from in this discussion as well. So I think that was very useful for me and for you to see something different. So I would suggest to all of you try and use Notebook LM as much as you can. If you've ever been interviewed on a podcast, load it up or something like that. Yana says, I used to organize ambassador meetings with C-level managers in companies I work with or would like to work with, 3-hour meetings. I think it's a great idea. Really good idea to get ambassador meetings, particularly in companies you want to work with and companies you are working with, that you want to expand your work in there. Plants, get some plants in the companies and middle managers that people take seriously, right? So I think that's a wonderful idea. Okay, thanks, Annalise. Sam, be vulnerable by sharing something that makes me weak where they are strong. Okay, I know what you mean. What you're saying is be self-effacing. Don't come like you've got all the answers right up front, because most people really struggle with that, don't like it. Elaborate on a pitch deck. Sure, Claire, we'll do that, and then I think we're going to bring it to a natural close. A series of slides, it doesn't matter how many, that you can take somebody through, that takes them on the journey from, and this is the pitch deck that you would have after you say to somebody, may I share with you how we can help you? And they say yes. And then you say, okay, well, let's start. Slide number 1 is, this is the big problem, okay, that people that I'm dealing with like you are facing. That's the big problem. Slide 2 is, this is what people are doing about it that's not working. Slide 3 is, this is who I am, some of my background, proof of who I am, testimonies, whatever. Slide 4, this is the structure, the blueprint I'm going to take you through to get from your current state all the way to your desired state. Slide 5, these are some of the options. Slide 6, here's a case study of somebody I've done this with recently who got a great result. And slide 7, a call to action. There's a very quick pitch deck. They can come in all shapes or sizes, but that's a quick one of that. If you want to have a look at that again, just go back and go to the go to the recording at about the 50-minute mark and you'll find it there. Any final questions before we go today? Did you find that useful?
Yeah, very.
Very
Thank you.
useful.
Okay,
Very
great.
useful.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Let me see what's happening next week. I think you've got Lundy next week, if I'm right. Can't remember what it's about. But yeah, I think you've got Lundy next week, and I will see you in the next couple of weeks. You all have a fantastic day. You know where to find me if you need me. Hasta la vista. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Bye.